My name is Kshitij Saxena, and I'm here to talk a little bit about data-driven dealerships. But before I do that, I'll introduce ourselves. We are Auto Ninja. Auto Ninja is a 3.5-year-old young startup, if I may say. We are today proud to be the largest maker of dealer CRM systems in India. About 200 odd dealerships across 18 OEMs use our software to do service marketing, insurance marketing, as well as drive sales. Why I'm here to talk about data-driven dealerships? It's because over our, again, 3.5-year-old journey, what we have seen more and more is that most decisions at dealerships in India today, unfortunately, are not data-based. And that is something that we hope to change. Another thing that you might notice in the title is about Twitter. So we're going to talk about Twitter. You might ask, why are we talking about Twitter? Because back in 2010, most people believed that Twitter and Facebook both were going to be dominant social media platforms. That was the expectation, that these would be the large social networks out there. But Twitter did not live up to that promise. It did not do as well. And there are lessons in that failure that a lot of us in this room today can learn from, and I'll talk about that. So yeah, let's start. So first of all, what do you guys use Twitter for? So I don't know about you guys. I know some people use Twitter for news, but I primarily use it for entertainment. And if you have not been thoroughly entertained by Donald Trump over the past 12 months or so, then I don't know which world you have been living in. But he has been one hell of a fun guy to be following all this time. So this is a case in point. This is a tweet he just tweeted out about, right into the Republican primaries he said this. Can you guys notice what's so funny about this tweet? Yeah, Mr. President, Paris is not in Germany. It's in France. So yeah, so that's Twitter for you. Now, the important point about Twitter is it's an entertaining place. It's a place which really delivers all kinds of Donald Trump kind of shenanigans to the whole world. But it has not been growing. It has been more than 2 years since Twitter has had even an iota of user growth. There's no growth at all. And it's not for want of trying. Twitter has changed its CEOs 3 times. It started with Jack Dorsey. Next was Evan Williams. Next was Dick Costolo. And now we are full circle back into Jack Dorsey, and we are not seeing any growth at all. So it's not for want of trying. Twitter made a mistake, and at the end of the talk, I'll talk about that mistake in depth because that's the biggest learning for us from Twitter's debacle. But before I do that, I'll introduce a framework. So this is a framework we use to analyze successful technology products, whether it's a want, whether it's a need, whether it's a utility. And let's go into a little bit of depth. When you talk about a technology product being a want, it means that this product solves one specific need for a user. Okay, that's what a want is. What is a need? A need is a technology which is a part of your workflow. That's how you live, that's how you work. A utility is beyond that. A utility is something which is a platform on which multiple other things are built. That's what utility is, okay? And most products never get to the stage of becoming a utility, but some do. For example, Facebook. Today, there are millions of apps and games that are built on top of Facebook, where Facebook is the platform which is powering all of these apps, all of these utilities. Even if you take any new app today that's in the market, Facebook is always the preferred method of login for more than 1 billion users out there in the world, which is all going to show how Facebook has become ubiquitous, how it is indispensable in today's environment. Versus Twitter. Twitter is not. There is no exact parallel, no even near parallel to that strategy. If you want to think about this framework with a more accessible example, think about phones. Think about feature phones. So feature phones, I'm sure all of us are old enough to have used feature phones for quite a part of our lives. They were definitely needs. They were some things that that's how our day started, that's how our day ended. We did a lot. It was a need, definitely. But if you notice, compare them to smartphones, there were absolutely no third-party utilities built on top of feature phones at all. Now compare that to Android, compare that to iOS, and you will see millions and millions of utilities built on top of smartphones. So that's the difference between technology adoption of something which is a need and something which is a utility. You couldn't possibly have had something like Uber on top of feature phones, but you do on Android phones, you do on iOS phones. So this is our three-stage framework. Now, the long and short of it, why Twitter couldn't succeed, and according to many analysts today, is because it failed to become that platform. It should have, it had a chance, but it did not. Now I'll go in depth at the end, I promise. At the end of this talk, I'll talk about why. What was that reason? What happened? What was that failure? I'll talk about that. But for now, that's the reason, and I'll move on to the crux of this talk, okay, which is about data-driven dealerships and what can we do about that? What can we learn from there? So yeah, when we start to analyze this thought about data-driven dealerships, where do you start? You start with EBITDA. You start with what pays for rent. You start with the most important metric for a dealership. And you realize that for most dealerships, this is an average example we are taking here, there are 5 departments: sales, service, insurance, body shop, and loans. And they contribute the entire EBITDA pie for a dealership, of which sales, service, insurance, body shop are the 4 largest ones. The key takeaway is that 2/3 of the dealer's EBITDA typically comes from after-sales activities. Going a step further, looking into what are the burning issues in each of these major EBITDA slices. If you look at service, for example, 80% of a well-run dealership's load, which is all the consumer traction that they're getting, every single vehicle that is entering their workshop, is coming there because of outbound marketing, because of SMS campaigns, because of emails, but primarily because of a call center which is driving all that work, all that load. You go to insurance and you realize that this call center or this outbound marketing channel now drives as high as 96% of a well-run dealership's revenues. Not revenue, sorry, EBITDA. And you go into sales and you realize that conversion rates are meager. For all the leads that a dealership generates, 5 to 6% is the average, conversion rate that they get. Which means for every car that they sell, they have to follow through at least 18 to 20 people for every car that they're selling. And now when you look at this, all these three things combined, you realize that in all of these 3 things, lead management is the central essence that is, that's very important. If you're not doing well there, you're not doing anything at all on your EBITDA. But what's the status quo? What does it look like at dealerships? Unfortunately, most dealerships today, and you must be aware, do not use a CRM at all. Instead, all leads are managed on pen and paper, which leads to inefficient marketing and which leads to full revenue potential not being realized at these dealerships. What you're seeing as the overlay image, as the background, is the standard way a salesperson today, and there are 1 lakh of these, manage all the leads that are coming at the dealership through various multivarious sources. So what is the need? What is required in this? What is required is a CRM system which can take all this data coming from all these different departments, sales, service, insurance, loans, everything, and create a central data warehouse. And then that data warehouse should feed into all the outbound marketing that the dealership does. It should then ensure all the downstream process adherence that is required to ensure that revenue comes in, and finally results into revenue. So this is what our thesis was when we started this company. This is what we wanted to build, and this is what we have built for about 200 odd dealerships today in India. There are lots of learnings that we have had in this. So I talked about taking data from all departments, creating a central data warehouse. What happens if you successfully do it? I'm showing you here, this is a case study for a dealership, a decently large-sized dealership in India. In fact, one of the largest dealerships in India. They sell about 2,500 cars every month. And for them, they use our CRM system for doing insurance marketing. For them, anywhere between 10 to 12% of their entire insurance revenue comes from leads that never originated in the insurance database at all. If their insurance and service DBs were to continue as they are for everyone else in India, then this entire red chunk of revenue would not come to them at all. And this is just insurance renewal. Let's move on. A different case study now. I'm looking at a different dealership. And I'm showing you now not just insurance, but all departments. So for example, in insurance, 15% of their revenue for this dealership comes from service marketing. So so I was talking about this case study. So this is again a large dealership, 25,000 vehicles being serviced every month, huge dealership, another of our clients. If you look at their new car revenue, 9% of that revenue comes from leads which are not generated by salespeople, but leads which are generated by the service department or the insurance department or whatever else is there. Because these departments, we have closely integrated them. So the moment someone in service realizes that this person needs, let's say, refinance, or this person needs, let's say, insurance, there is a messaging system where they can immediately transfer this lead to the right guy, and there is monitoring, there is follow-up, so that everyone knows whether this lead then got worked upon or not, which is what's happening here. So 12 crores, more than 12 crore rupees of revenue generated from leads which never originated in the respective department. So that's what my point is. Collaboration, this is what it does to dealerships. One more point I would like to make here. So all of this, note that all of this is happening even though the central information system at this dealership and all dealerships are absolutely closed in nature. There are no APIs available anywhere. It's all done in a manual and painstaking way. So despite that nature of doing this manually, still these are the results we are able to see. So I've been talking about CRM a little bit. What does it? Let's define it a little bit. Okay, very simply. So basically, a good CRM enables a dealership to market its services to the right customer at the right time with the right message, and helps the dealership monitor its workforce, which is actually doing this marketing. So whether it is telecallers, whether it is salespeople, their monitoring is central to the key aspect of managing these guys. So let's talk about the right customer aspect. What can technology do to ensure that this right identification of customer, happens smoothly, seamlessly, even better? So I'm showing you a case study of how we use artificial intelligence and machine learning. If you guys follow machine learning, then the specific approach we use here is called random forest. So what we do here is we take all kinds of leads, so whether it is service leads, sales leads, insurance leads, which are generated in our system, and we associate properties to each lead. For example, if it's a service lead, then car age is a property. How old is the car? Okay? Or whether this guy also has an insurance with the dealer or not, that's a property. So there are 32 such properties we identify, and then random forest figures out that based on these properties of these leads, which has the highest probability of conversion. So in this graph, the x-axis is what the algorithm says, that these are 1 star, lowest probability conversions, 5 star, highest probability of conversions. That's how it ranks, 1 to 5 star. On the left image, you're seeing a rank ordered list. So finally, what the CRM outputs to the telemarketers is, here is a list of people in this order, start calling, or start acting on it. And in which 5 stars obviously have the highest probability. That's what the algorithm says. Now, what does it do for the dealership? Look at all those red leads. If the dealership were to work on all leads equally, it would end up spending, X amount of effort. If it uses this kind of rank order prioritization using machine learning, it is able to get the same kind of results, same kind of conversions in just 1/3 the effort. So 67% of the effort is saved, it's gone. All that is cost saving, all that is, whatever, time saving. And you get the same kind of results. Now, if you were to put that manpower into, even better marketing efforts, your overall pie also increases. That's what the central point here is. So this is one technology, one case study. There are multiple such things. One point I would like to add is, so I was talking about lead prioritization, right? Rank ordering within the service department. So what does it mean? I mean, how is it happening? What's the internals? So I'll just give you a flavor, quick flavor, okay? When you do cross-department integration, then what happens is that the algorithm which is going to rank this is able to find out, okay, did this guy give you a 10 on PSF last time? Because what the algorithm says is, and finds from data, that people who gave you a 10 last time versus people who gave you a less than 8 last time, there's a 3x probability of conversion there. If someone gave you a pickup last time versus someone who just walked in, there is again a 3x kind of a boost you get. People who give pickups are more probable to convert next time. people who have insurance with the dealership have a 2x probability of converting on service than people who don't. So all of these factors feed into this algorithm, gets converted into a rank ordered list, and all of this happens automatically, which is what impacts revenue. So this was about finding the right customer, a small flavor. Next point I want to make is the right time. What's the right time to market to this customer? And once more, I'm going to talk about service marketing itself, because that's the easiest thing to understand in a short time. So if you look at any dealership today and you just ask this small question, between two services, how much time was spent? Okay? Now you'll typically find that most OEMs, apart from Mahindra, actually, has a logic where the service is due by either mileage or time, whichever happens first, right? So we just ask this question, between any two services, let us say the third free service and the first paid service, okay? Where it's either 10,000 kilometers or 1 year, whichever is earlier, okay? There, how much time does a customer need, actually? And you'll realize that 75% of the customers are actually converting before the 1 year is complete, which means roughly 75% of customers are converting on mileage and not on date at all. Now, if you talk about service marketing, how does it work at dealerships? Typically, the way it works is, depends on, again, different OEM systems. Some people do, some people don't. Where mileage prediction is not available at all, how dealerships work is they keep calling the customers who did a service, let's say 1 year back, right? So basically, if you just market to those people who did a service 1 year back, you're only going to market to these 16% of people. Because all these would already have converted, all these are not even in your consideration set. So just 16% is what get marketed to. Rest are not marketed at all. Hota hi nahi hai. So this is the state. So what do intelligent dealerships do? Dealerships are very, very sharp businessmen, by the way. What do they do then? If mileage prediction is not available in the system, what do they do? What they do is, they start calling the same customers repeatedly after every 3 months. Every 3 months, customers get a call. Sir, your service is due, even if it is not due. Right? So overcalling happens. Customers get bothered. That's what happens. Interesting point is that even if, let's say, a 20,000 kilometer call happens to a customer, and the customer says, "Nahi yaar, mera 20,000 to nahi hua, abhi 12,000 hua hai." The person who is calling has absolutely no way to make sense of that information. Kahin rakh hi nahi sakti uska, kuch nahi kar sakti bandi. So what happens then? Again, next cycle hoti hai, 3 mahine baad fir call aata hai. That's all. That's the way most dealerships today are doing service marketing. Agar mileage prediction nahi hai systems mein to. Then obviously that means ki you should build a system for mileage prediction. But then that's not trivial in India either. That's a very hard thing. You cannot just do a y equal to mx plus c aur bolo bhai straight line pe predict kar denge. Nahi hoga. Even regression doesn't work very nicely in India. Why? Because a lot of cases you find are of this nature, where what's happening is कि enough data ही नहीं है. There are 2 data points. उसके ऊपर क्या regression लगाओगे? That would never work. So in these cases, your algorithm has to be intelligent and actually use the population's set. कि भाई if this is an XUV running in a metro town, तो कितना होना चाहिए? अगर data enough नहीं है, तो उस population को use करो ना यार, right? Then there are these cases. Depending on, again, the maturity of the DMS system, there are going to be cases जहाँ पे गलत mileage punch in होगा job card में. So you're going to get these random outliers. Now run regression on this. There are 5 points. Run regression, what would happen? You would massively overpredict mileage. That's what would happen. So your regression algorithm has to statistically find outliers and remove them. Then there are going to be cases where customers' driving pattern is going to change. Either घर change हो गया, office change हो गया, job change हो गया, बीवी चला रही है, whatever. So you have to have recency bias in your algorithm. So you have to do all of this and then some to actually fix mileage prediction in Indian conditions. This is where we get strong algorithm, lots of data. You can get to as high as 80%. The best we have done for any dealership is 88% accuracy within 2,000 kilometers of prediction. So 20,000 की सर्विस जब प्रेडिक्ट होती है तो 18 से 22 के अंदर बंदा होता है 88% of the times. This is the best we have achieved. And again, my point here is that this is all done on closed systems. If these systems were open, there would be access to a lot more data, structured data, which exists, by the way. Just that access to it is not there anywhere. Agar hota, this prediction would be beyond 90%. And it's not that we need to do it, anyone can do it. Another important thing is, so we talked about right customers, we talked about right time, now I'm going to talk about right message. Today, most service marketing, insurance marketing, everything is very transactional in nature. You'll get a call, sir, आपकी service due है. That's about it, right? Yes, sir, आपका insurance due है. Now, if this call comes in and you just ask, yeah, just 2 months back, I had a terrible service experience at one of your workshops. The other guy will just put the phone down. She or he has no idea how to handle this customer. Because there's no context setting. There's no context at all. Context is missing from marketing completely. What you need is, again, this integration of databases so that sales data, service data, insurance, PSF, everything is available in just one place. So that this telemarketer who's making these calls is able to just say, sir, I know कि आपका last time Mr. X ने आपके साथ सर्विस किया था, आपने मुझे 6 दिया था 10 में से, but sir, I also know कि आपने 9 बार और सर्विस किया है पिछले 3 साल में. And all of those things have been all 10 out of 10. So I know last time was a bad experience, please believe us, it will not happen again. By the way, your insurance is due, why don't you come, can I send someone over? That's a very different kind of a conversation. The quality of that conversation is high, which is why success rate of this kind of a conversation is very high. So this is about the right message. Finally, moving on to monitoring. This is the last point. Now, if you have done all of this right, but your people are not actually involved in this effort, then you have not won anything. No, it's just not going to work out. And when you talk about monitoring in either a salesperson or a call center kind of a perspective, the first thing is call recordings. You have to record every single conversation and then have that available for audit. So you cannot just record every conversation, put it in a directory dump. कि Windows से directory उसमें 1 million files है, कर लो जो करना है. That's just not going to work out. That's a shitty idea. What you need to do is make these recordings analyzable. कि your team lead should be able to say कि भाई देखो, I just want to hear those cases जहाँ पे एक premium model की कार पे मेरे पास complaint आई है. I just want to find पूरे महीने में ऐसे कौन से cases हुए हैं, who is responsible, how to remove that weak link. या फिर नहीं, ऐसा है कि all people who said पिछले महीने में कि I don't want to do let's say a service with you because I was unhappy. But the duration of the call was less than 10 seconds. Give me those cases. So I can find out who my marketeers are who are not doing a good job at convincing my people. So all those things have to happen. And when you talk about monitoring, this is essential, and I hope you guys are aware. In any call center kind of an environment, you cannot trust the output of the telemarketer completely. They might be saying, they might say कि the customer doesn't want to do a service, punch it, forward कर सकता है, and he can leave, right? So you want a system which is intelligent enough to be able to throw you notifications. आपके team lead को email आना चाहिए कि यार इसने जैसे ही he said कि no service but there is no call recording available, immediate notification. So we do this at every dealership, but I'm showing you a case study here. This is a Mumbai-based dealership we work with very closely. There were about 2,000 cases of fraud by telecallers every month. And then they launched this module, we call it fraud detection module within our CRM system. They launched this module and that number came down tenfold in just a matter of days. Because now telecallers knew that every time they do anything which is false, तुरंत email आता है team lead को. That brings me to the conclusion, and I promised you guys I'll talk about what is it that Twitter got wrong, why its strategy did not work. So basically it's an IT strategy error, okay? That's why they could not become a platform. In 2009, the CEO of Twitter was Evan Williams. This is the vision he formulated for Twitter and for the entire company. They wanted Twitter to be the pulse of the planet. They wanted Twitter to have 1 billion people on the platform, and they wanted Twitter to get every single thought. Anyone has a real thought, it should come into Twitter. That was the idea. What did it mean? It meant that the client was unimportant. Twitter.com was not important. No matter where you are, even if, let's say it's a third-party client, it's a third-party service, if you're having a thought, Twitter should get it. That was the idea. Kaise bilao? Which is why, back in 2009, Twitter had very strong API integrations. You could do anything. There were more than 1,000 Twitter clients. Twitter.com was just one client. There were 1,000 other clients for Twitter. Then leadership changed. Dick Costolo was brought in 2010, and he reformulated the vision of Twitter. He said, and it's on record, he said, Twitter is fundamentally a media company which is there in the business of monetizing user attention through ads. That's what he said. Now what's the difference? The difference is the moment if the leadership is thinking that, what happens? What happens is any single thing which is taking attention away from Twitter.com is stopping you from monetization. It's stopping you, it's getting you less consumer engagement, right? So what do? You kill all of that. Which is what exactly Twitter did. In 2010, Twitter completely killed off all Twitter clients. More than 1,000 Twitter clients died on a single day. And they completely restricted their API access. They became a complete walled garden. So instead of following a platform strategy, they followed a walled garden strategy. This is what happened. This is why these guys never got there. Whereas Facebook had a very different strategy. No matter what you ask me data about all my friends list, okay, here's a friend list, all 2,000 friends. You want data about all my likes since I've been on Facebook? Okay, here it is. All the 5,000 likes that this guy has ever done in his life. All data was available through APIs, which is why Facebook could become the platform that it became, versus Twitter could never. So what's our learning here, and what's the connect? So basically, if you look at IT systems today within dealerships, whether they are DMS systems, some kind of ERP systems. So you guys are some of the leaders, by the way. You are leading these systems, right? Point is, are your products, are your technology systems wants or needs or platforms? And if they are not platforms, then think about it. If you were to make them platforms, if you were to enable third-party developers to, find and analyze, I've just showed you 3-4 case studies. Imagine if thousands of such things can happen, what kind of innovation can happen in this ecosystem? So that's a thought I want to leave you guys with. So thank you so much for your time.